This story begins in a vibrant city where the nightlife is busy and the streets never sleep. For Detective Cooper, this is where he calls home. Detective Cooper is 52 years old and is a 30-year police veteran that specializes in homicide. Over the years, he has seen it all, from minor incidents to the most gruesome crime scenes. Nothing much phases him during his career, but in a leading twisted chain of events, a particular case will shake his mental and physical existence to the core and test his reality. Detective Cooper lives with his family, his 50-year-old wife Andrea, and their 22-year-old son Noah. They have a unique family relationship as Andrea is a paramedic and usually spends a lot of hours working and doesn't get to spend much quality time with the family, and so does Detective Cooper, as they both are very much occupied with work. Over the years, they have isolated themselves and became so accustomed to the daily routine of life that at times they would unintentionally neglect Noah. Noah is a college freshman. He is shy, reserved, young, and impressionable. Because of this, he doesn't have many friends and yearns for being accepted and a feeling of belonging. In the days leading up to the tragic event, it was Noah's birthday, and the family decided to celebrate by having a home-cooked dinner. Andrea was busy preparing the chicken, pacing back and forth in the kitchen with a slight feeling of anxiety noticeable in her demeanor, while the TV was playing in the background. Cooper was in the living room, sitting in the couch and watching the news, smoking his cigarette while staring at the TV with a slight gaze. The timer for the oven chimed. With anticipation, everybody assembled to the dining table to eat. Once seated, there was a tense silence, heads down, and the only thing that could be heard was the sounds of plates shuffling and the TV playing in the background. Andrea's eyes were pacing side to side. She was anxious and uncertain while in thought. She could not hold in what she wanted to say, and in a rush of emotions, she made a sudden outburst to Cooper. "I want a divorce!" The table immediately got quiet as their faces were covered with shock. The feeling of tension could be cut with a knife. Noah made a slight cough that broke the silence. He immediately got up and went to his room, leaving his food on the table. Cooper and Andrea then got into a heated argument as tensions raised. Noah was in his room covering his head with the pillow to try and drown out the noise. As it got later in the night, the tension subsided and the place was quiet leading into the morning. As the sun rose, Cooper and Andrea got into their regular routine as they were both getting ready for work. But the distance feeling between them from the night before was evident. They called out to Noah, but he was not in his room. They assumed he went to school because his backpack was gone and his room was neatly made. They tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. They decided to leave for work as it started to get late and got into their separate vehicles. While Cooper was driving with his windows down, smoking a cigarette as it disappeared into the morning wind, he immediately got a call about a homicide that took place at a convenience store. He quickly diverted and went to the scene. Nothing could prepare Detective Cooper for what he was about to see next as he went to the deceased victim. He kneeled down and slowly lifted the sheet and then froze in utter shock and disbelief. It was his son, Noah. A look of anguish and confusion immediately took over his face upon the realization of his deceased son. Paramedics arrived on the scene, and in an ironic twist, Andrea was on duty and saw Cooper distraught and being consoled by other law enforcement officers. She went to him very concerned on what could have brought him to such a state of despair. It took him a few attempts as the words could not come out. He faintly said Noah. In an immediate reaction, she responded, "What happened to Noah?" in a frantic and urgent tone. There was a tense silence. It was then she made the realization that their son Noah had indeed passed, and they both were shattered by what happened and consoled each other. Did they fail their son? How could this have been avoided? All the internal questions were now being asked upon the realization of their son's passing. Upon investigation by Cooper, it was confirmed Noah died by gunshot wounds, by talking with witnesses on the scene, and camera footage by the store. The actual crime was recorded and seen by detectives, showing Noah on the corner, apparently standing with another male. An altercation developed, and then Noah was shot multiple times. Detective Cooper's emotions changed from grief and sadness to anger and rage as the violent death of his son triggered a deep fury. He was now determined, committed, and motivated to catch his son's killer. As the day went along and the night fell, the house that was a home was now empty and quiet. Cooper was in the living room, drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes to cope with the grief, as Andrea was in Noah's room lying in bed, still saddened. As Cooper was reflecting on the day, he immediately got up and started to get ready as if going to work, even though it was 11 p.m. Andrea saw Cooper pacing back and forth while getting ready. She asked where he was going. Cooper responded in a strong but quiet tone, "I have to solve my son's murder." And then he quickly left. He was now patrolling the city as the night mist glided along his vehicle and the lights reflected on the surface. He was approaching the convenience store Noah died and immediately slowed down as he saw a man standing on the corner, looking suspicious. As Cooper stopped at the man's feet, he immediately ran, and in a quick reaction, Cooper quickly jumped out the vehicle and made chase, running as fast as he could, yelling at the man to stop and knocking garbage cans and anything in the way. In a burst of speed, Cooper caught and tackled the man to the floor and yelled, "Why was he running?" as they were both out of breath. The man was apprehensive to respond to his question. Cooper lifted him up from the ground while holding his collar and then slammed him on the wall and yelled the same question. The man stuttered, saying he was scared as he was selling drugs on the corner. Cooper then asked if he knew Noah. The man in a saddened voice responded, "Yes." Armed with this information, Cooper digged deeper in questioning. The man confessed that him and Noah were in a gang and were selling drugs for the leader. Cooper could not believe what he was hearing, that his son was living a double life, involved in a gang and was selling drugs. Cooper slightly zoned out because of the disbelief, but quickly regained his composure. Armed with this information, Cooper insisted that he gave him the location of the leader. But the man was scared and hesitant because of the repercussions of what might happen by telling him. The man was visibly shaken. Cooper dragged him closer with a firm and strong grip while looking into his eyes with a deadly stare. There was a long pause. The man took a deep breath and told him the location of the leader. Cooper immediately let the man go, went into his vehicle and went directly to the location. He was speeding as he was determined to catch his son's killer. There were a few vehicles on the road as it was now 12:30 a.m. As he reached closer and closer to his location, the area got lonelier. There were fewer cars and people. It was a rough neighborhood with a lot of abandoned houses, as the area had an eerie and mysterious feel. While coming to the location, he came creeping to a stop, scanning the neighborhood and the house. He exited the vehicle and slowly proceeded up the stairs while he pulled his service pistol from his waistband. The house was in darkness with just one light on upstairs. Cooper was in a rush as his heart paced. He didn't call for any police backup. It was just him alone. As he reached the top of the stairs, he knocked on the door. There was no sound. He knocked again, and he could hear movement inside, as someone was shuffling and the curtain from upstairs slightly moved, but no one answered. Then suddenly the light upstairs turned off and the house descended in complete darkness. Cooper tried the front door handle, but it was locked. He identified himself and said police, and waited a few seconds, but there was still no answer. Cooper, still overcome with emotions, anger, and grief, kicked the door open and immediately pointed his gun into the dark house, as he was uncertain on what to expect. The house was almost empty, with old furniture and broken fixtures. He quietly entered, gently walking on the old floor and scanning the area as the house was eerily calm. As he was looking around the house, he could hear footsteps coming from somewhere inside, but was unable to locate where it was coming from. Cooper scanned each room in darkness as he used a flashlight to help him see. As he was approaching the last room downstairs, he suddenly heard footsteps running towards him. He quickly turned the gun around to face what was running at him, but he saw nothing. He was puzzled as the house descended into complete quietness. He slowly walked back into the rooms he previously cleared. As he entered the kitchen area, he saw some utensils on the floor and proceeded to kneel and investigate what else was on the ground. Then out of nowhere, he was tackled by a man from behind that knocked him to the floor, causing him to drop his firearm. The man then kneeled over Cooper and began to strangle him. He could barely move as he tried to fight off the man. They were both breathing heavily during the struggle, and Cooper began punching the man as he slowly began to lose consciousness. Cooper finally got to kick the man off him and proceeded to run for his firearm on the ground. But the man pulled a knife from the kitchen counter and stabbed Cooper's arm, causing him to lose balance and fall. Cooper immediately took up the firearm, quickly turned around and opened fire in the direction of the man. But miraculously, the man ran before Cooper turned around and he escaped the hail of bullets. The house then plunged into complete silence after such an intense standoff. In the silence, the man was heard whistling and mimicking Cooper and confessing he killed Noah earlier that day. Cooper, now confirming that he has his son's killer, was determined to not let him escape. He thoroughly inspected each room as the sounds of footsteps could be heard around him. He was slightly losing consciousness as the blood lost from the stab was now taking effect, but he was determined to stay vigilant. Cooper began to enter the living room, and then suddenly he heard a loud yell as he saw the man's silhouette with a knife running towards him. Cooper was in shock as he was caught off guard. He began to fall back, but in an instant reaction, he raised his firearm and shot the attacker 3 times as they both collapsed on the floor, the attacker falling over him. There was a tense silence, and then Cooper moved the attacker off him. Cooper made a huge sigh of relief as he reflected on the day of events, from losing his only child, then to now killing his child's killer. Cooper called the police, and they arrived on a scene and did their investigation. The leader for the gang was killed, and eventually his whole organization was dismantled. A witness came forward identifying Noah's killer, and Cooper was cleared of any charges. This is a story about a son that was led into a life of crime to be accepted, and a father that was determined to find out what happened to his son and seek justice.